Welcome to Lecture 10 for Old Testament Historical Books. This lecture will cover Part 1 of Israel under Divided Rule. Roman number 1. Rehoboam reigns as king of Judah, and Jeroboam reigns as king of Israel. Letter A. Rehoboam loses the kingdom. Number 1. Israel asks Rehoboam to lighten their load. After Rehoboam was made the king at Shechem, Jeroboam returned from Egypt, and he and the assembly of Israel met with Rehoboam for the purpose of having their work lightened, since his father Solomon had put such a heavy yoke on them. In response to this, Rehoboam said for them to go away for 3 days and then come back, and he would have an answer for them. Secondly, Rehoboam seeks counsel. He first went to his father's counselors, and they advised him to lighten the people's load so that he would be seen as a servant to the people. However, he forsook their advice for the advice of those that grew up with him, who said that he should tell them that he will be even more harsh on the people. The symbolism that's used here is that his pinky will be thicker than his father's thigh, and his father's whips will be replaced with scorpions. This was actually brought on by the Lord so that the word spoken by the prophet Ahijah would be fulfilled. Letter B. Jeroboam becomes king of Israel. Number 1. Israel stones the taskmaster. After Israel realized that Rehoboam would not listen to them, they stoned Adoram, the taskmaster over the forced laborers. So Rehoboam fled to Jerusalem, and Israel called Jeroboam and made him the king of Israel. Secondly, Rehoboam attempts a civil war with Israel. When Rehoboam returned to Jerusalem, he assembled 180,000 warriors of Judah and Benjamin in order to fight against Israel. However, the Lord sent the man of God, Shemaiah, to tell them not to fight against their relatives. They listened to the word of the Lord and returned home. Letter C. Jeroboam institutes idolatry in Israel. Number 1. Jeroboam makes 2 golden calves. Jeroboam feared that if the people traveled to Jerusalem to observe the holy feast, then the kingdom would turn back to the house of David and they would kill him. So he was advised to make these golden calves in order for people to worship them as their own gods. One of the calves he placed in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan as his new holy places. Then he appointed his own holy days on the same days as those prescribed in the law of Moses. Secondly, Jeroboam expels the priests. In order to accomplish his plan, he expelled all the Levitical priests from their lands, forced them down into Judah, and then appointed his own priests to worship and sacrifice to his golden calves and his goat idols. Thankfully, those who still followed the Lord followed after the Levites to worship and sacrifice to the Lord, and the people of Judah walked after the Lord for 3 years under Rehoboam's reign in Judah. Letter D. Rehoboam marries multiple royal wives. Rehoboam married a granddaughter of David, which would make her his half niece, a sister of David, which would make her his aunt, and a daughter of Absalom, which would make her his cousin. He loved Maacah, the daughter of Absalom, the most above all his wives and concubines. He had 18 wives and 60 concubines, which fathered him 88 sons and 60 daughters. He also intended to name her son Abijah or Abijam as the next king of Judah, since he was a very wise man. Letter E. A prophet lies and a man of God dies. Number 1. A man of God speaks against Jeroboam. The man of God, which was another name for a prophet as shown in verse 18, came from Judah to Bethel while Jeroboam was standing by his altar to tell him that the Lord said a son would come out of David named Josiah, and he would punish these priests. A sign that this would come to pass was that this altar would be torn down and ashes would fall out. Secondly, the man of God heals Jeroboam's hand. After hearing these words, Jeroboam stretched out his hand and said, "Seize him." And immediately the hand that was stretched out dried up so that he could not draw it back to himself. Then the altar was torn down and the ashes fell out, fulfilling the word of the Lord from the man of God. Jeroboam then begged the man of God to ask the Lord to heal him, which he did. And Jeroboam asked the man of God to return with him to his home for a reward. However, the man of God responded that even if he gave him half his house, he would not return with him. And the Lord told him not to eat bread or drink water or even return the same way that he came until he returned back to Judah. Thirdly, a prophet deceives the man of God into eating. When an old prophet in Bethel was told about all that happened to Jeroboam and the man of God's words, he had his sons help him find the man of God and ask him to come back to his house to eat. The man of God told the prophet that the Lord said he was not allowed to eat bread or drink water until he returned to Judah. But the prophet lied and said that the Lord told him to bring him back to his house to eat bread and drink water. So the man of God went with the prophet and ate and drank. Fourthly, the man of God is killed by a lion. While they were eating, the Lord spoke through the prophet that since he had disobeyed the word of the Lord and did not keep his commandment to not eat bread or drink water, then he will not be buried in the tomb of his fathers. Then, when the man of God left, a lion met him on the road and killed him. But since a lion did not eat him or his donkey, the prophet took the body and buried him in his own tomb and gave instructions to his sons to bury him in the same tomb when he died, right next to the man of God, since the man of God called out by the word of the Lord against the altar in Bethel. And fifthly, Jeroboam ignores the man of God's warnings. After all this, Jeroboam did not turn from his evil way, and he ordained more priests from any tribe to be priests of his high places. These acts, which were idolatry and ordaining priests that were not of the tribe of Levi, became known as the sin of Jeroboam and would ultimately cause them to be destroyed. Roman numeral 2. Various kings reign in Israel and Judah. Letter A. Jeroboam's son Abijah becomes sick. Number 1. Jeroboam secretly sends his wife to Ahijah. When Abijah got sick, Jeroboam told his wife to disguise herself and go to Ahijah. Ahijah was the prophet who said he would be the king over the people. He did this in order to find out what might happen to his son. Secondly, Abijah pronounces judgment upon Jeroboam's house. At this point in Ahijah's life, he was almost blind, but the Lord already warned him that she was coming, so when she arrived, he informed her that he had unbearable news. He told Jeroboam's wife that since Jeroboam was unlike his servant David, who kept his commandments and followed after him with all his heart, but instead did more evil than all who were before him with his idolatry, the Lord would cut off every male in his house and burn his home like a man burns dung until it's all gone. And the ones who die in the city will be eaten by dogs, and the ones who die in the field will be eaten by birds. Thirdly, Ahijah pronounces that Abijah will die. Ahijah told Jeroboam's wife to go to her house, and when she steps foot into the city, the child will die, and all Israel will mourn for him. In addition to this, the Lord said he would raise up a king over Israel that day who would cut off the house of Jeroboam because he sinned and made Israel to sin. When Jeroboam's wife arrived back to Tirzah, as soon as she came to the threshold of the house, the child perished. Letter B. Rehoboam's reign ends in Judah. Number one, Rehoboam abandons the law of the Lord. When Rehoboam's rule was established and he was strong, he abandoned the law of the Lord and all of Judah with him. He built idolatrous places of worship and even allowed male cult prostitutes in the land. They ended up performing all the abominations of the nations that the Lord drove out of Israel. Because of this, number two, Shishak, king of Egypt, attacks Jerusalem. In the 5th year of Rehoboam's reign, Shishak, the king of Egypt, invaded Jerusalem with an innumerable number of men from Egypt, Libya, Suk, and Ethiopia. Thirdly, Rehoboam and the princes humbled themselves. Shemaiah the prophet came to them and said that since they had abandoned the Lord, then the Lord was abandoning them by the hand of Shishak. But the king and princes proclaimed the righteousness of the Lord and humbled themselves. So the Lord declared that since they did this, he would not destroy them, but they would still become servants to Shishak. Fourthly, Shishak takes the treasures of the house of the Lord and the king. Shishak took away the treasures of the house of the Lord as well as the treasures of the king's house, including the shields of gold Solomon made. That's why Rehoboam ended up making bronze shields that he had the guards transport with him when he went into the house of the Lord. And fifthly, Rehoboam dies. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he began to reign. He reigned for 17 years and did evil, since he did not set his heart to seek the Lord. His son, Abijah, also known as Abijam, reigned in his stead. Letter C. Abijah, also known as Abijam, reigns over Judah. Number one, he reigned for 3 years. Abijah was the son of Maacah, the daughter of Absalom, and he began his reign during the 18th year of King Jeroboam and reigned for only 3 years. Secondly, he goes to war against Jeroboam in Israel. There was a war between Abijah and Jeroboam, so Abijah brought 400,000 men versus Jeroboam's 800,000 men. Thirdly, he addresses Israel. Abijah addressed Jeroboam and all Israel and declared that the kingdom belonged to the house of David. But Jeroboam rebelled against Solomon, defied Rehoboam, and then expelled the priests from ministering in their land. Fourthly, the Lord defeats Jeroboam. Jeroboam sent an ambush against Judah from the front and behind. But the men of Judah cried out to the Lord, the priests blew the trumpets, and God defeated Jeroboam and all Israel, killing 500,000 men because they relied on the Lord. Abijah even took some of Jeroboam's cities, including Bethel, and Jeroboam did not recover his power in the days of Abijah. However, Abijah grew mighty, taking 14 wives and having 22 sons and 16 daughters. Letter D. Nadab reigns over Israel. Number one, Jeroboam dies. During the 2nd year of Asa's reign in Judah, Jeroboam died after reigning for 22 years. His son Nadab took his place on the throne. But he did evil in the sight of the Lord and walked in the ways of his father, causing Israel to commit idolatry. Secondly, Baasha assassinates Nadab and all the children of Jeroboam. Nadab only reigned in Israel for 2 years because Baasha conspired against him and killed Nadab and all the children of Jeroboam, thus fulfilling the prophecy of Ahijah. Thirdly, Baasha becomes king of Israel. Baasha reigned for 24 years and did evil in the sight of the Lord and walked in the ways of Jeroboam by causing the people to be idolatrous. Letter E. Asa reigns over Judah. Number 1. Abijah dies. 3 years after Abijah began his reign, he died, and Asa his son reigned in his place. This was also during the 20th year of Jeroboam's reign, and Asa ended up reigning for 41 years. Asa did that which was good and right in the eyes of the Lord, and put away all the idolatrous places of worship in Judah, except the high places, and then he fortified the cities of Judah. Secondly, the Lord defeats Zerah, king of Ethiopia. Zerah came against Asa with 1,000,000 men, but Asa cried out to the Lord for help. So the Lord defeated the Ethiopians, and when they fled, Asa pursued after them and struck down all of their army. Thirdly, Asa spiritually reforms Judah. Letter A. The Lord sends Azariah to speak to Asa. Azariah told Asa that if he was with the Lord, then the Lord would be with him. And then he reminded him of the times when his people had called upon the Lord, and the Lord delivered them from their enemies. Letter B. Asa puts away the idols in Judah. When Asa heard the words of the Lord, he assembled Judah and Benjamin and all the other tribes that had come to Judah because the Lord was with them, and they put away all the idols from the land. They then made sacrifice to the Lord and swore an oath to him that whoever would not seek the Lord should be put to death. He even removed his own grandmother, Maacah, from being the queen mother because she was idolatrous. Number 4. Baasha, king of Israel, threatens Asa. Letter A. Asa makes a covenant with Syria. When Baasha came against Asa, he took silver and gold from the treasuries of the house of the Lord and sent them by way of his servants to Benhadad, king of Syria. He did this in order to help him in the battle against Baasha. This strategy worked because it caused Benhadad to break his covenant with Baasha, so Baasha stopped his militaristic pursuits. Letter B. Asa imprisons Hanani the prophet. Hanani the prophet came to Asa and told him that he had done foolishly by trusting in Syria to deliver them instead of trusting in the Lord as he had done against the Ethiopians. This angered Asa, so he had him put in stocks in prison and began inflicting cruelties upon many of his people. But, fifthly, Asa becomes diseased and dies. In the 39th year of his reign, Asa got a disease in his feet that became so severe that it ended up killing him, and he still refused to seek the Lord for help. Letter F. Israel becomes unstable. Number 1. Jehu pronounces judgment upon Baasha, king of Israel. The Lord sent Jehu to tell Baasha that since God put him in his place of leadership, but he decided to follow after the ways of Jeroboam, then the same fate that Jeroboam's house saw will happen to Baasha, even to the point that anyone in his house that dies in the city would be eaten by dogs, and anyone who dies in the field would be eaten by birds. Secondly, Elah reigns in Israel. Letter A. Elah reigns for 2 years. During Asa's 26th year reigning in Judah, Baasha died, and his son, Elah, reigned in his stead for only 2 years because, letter B, Zimri assassinates Elah. One of Elah's servants over half his chariots, named Zimri, conspired against him and killed him one night while Elah was drunk. Thirdly, Zimri reigns in Israel. Letter A. Zimri assassinates every male of the house of Baasha. The first thing Zimri did when he took the throne was kill every single male of the house of Baasha, and he did not leave a single male of his relatives or even his friends, thus fulfilling the words of the Lord by Jehu the prophet against Baasha. However, letter B, Zimri reigns for only 7 days. During the 27th year of Asa's reign in Judah, Zimri took the throne and only reigned for 7 days because. Number 4, Omri reigns in Israel. Letter A. Zimri burns the palace down and dies. When the troops heard that Zimri conspired against and killed Elah, they made their commander of the army, Omri, king of Israel. Then they went against Zimri in Tirzah, and instead of surrendering or even fighting, Zimri burned the king's house down with himself inside of it and died. Letter B, Tibni attempts to take the kingdom. The people of Israel were divided into 2 parts, with half following Omri and the other half following Tibni. But Omri's forces prevailed, and he became the king of Israel during the 31st year of Asa's reign in Judah. And letter C, Omri makes Samaria the capital of Israel. Omri bought the hill of Samaria from a man named Shemer, and he named it Samaria after Shemer. Omri ended up reigning for 12 years and did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all who were before him, and then he died. Fifthly, Ahab reigns in Israel. Letter A. Ahab reigned for 22 years. During the 38th year of Asa's reign in Judah, Omri died, and his son, Ahab, began to reign over Israel in Samaria, and he reigned for 22 years. Letter B, he married a princess named Jezebel. Ahab did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all who were before him, and took for his wife a woman named Jezebel, princess of the Sidonians who served Baal. And letter C, Hiel rebuilds Jericho. Hiel laid the foundation of Jericho at the cost of Abiram his firstborn, and set up the gates of Jericho at the cost of his youngest son Segub, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke by Joshua the son of Nun. Letter G, Jehoshaphat reigns in Judah. Number 1, Jehoshaphat strengthened Judah. After Asa died, his son Jehoshaphat reigned in his place and strengthened himself against Israel by fortifying the cities of Judah and the cities of Ephraim that his father captured. Secondly, Jehoshaphat educates the people of Judah. Jehoshaphat walked after the ways of his father David and sought the Lord instead of idols. He even took down the high places, so the Lord was with him and blessed him with great riches and honor. Then, during the 3rd year of his reign, he sent his officials with the priests and Levites throughout the cities of Judah to teach them the law from the book of Moses. And thirdly, the kingdoms become fearful of Jehoshaphat. The fear of the Lord was upon all the nations of the lands around Judah, so that they were afraid to war with them. Instead, nations like the Philistines and Arabians brought tribute to him, and he grew steadily greater by fortifying his cities better and even building new fortified cities. Roman numeral 3. Elijah ministers in Israel. Letter A. Elijah makes a prediction and performs a miracle. Number 1. Elijah predicts a drought in Israel. Elijah the Thisbite went to Ahab and told him that it would not rain these years until he said so. Then the Lord told him to go and hide by the brook Kerith, where he could drink water from the brook, and the Lord would send ravens to bring him bread and meat in the morning and evening. But after a while, the brook dried up since there was no rain in the land. Secondly, the widow's food is multiplied. The Lord told Elijah to go to Zarephath, and a widow there would take care of him. So he left and met her by the gate of the city and asked her for some food. The widow told Elijah that she only had enough flour and oil to make one last meal for her and her son, and then they were going to eat it and die. Elijah informed her that the Lord was going to bless her jar of flour and oil and make it to where it would not run out until the drought was over. So for many days, Elijah, the widow, and the widow's son ate cakes from the flour and oil jars. And thirdly, Elijah resurrects the widow's son. Sometime later, the widow's son became ill and died. So, in response to his death and her blaming him, Elijah took him to the upper chamber, stretched himself over the son 3 times, prayed, and the Lord gave him back his life. Letter B. The drought in Israel ends. Number 1. Elijah meets a godly servant of Ahab named Obadiah. 3 years after the drought began, the Lord told Elijah to go to Ahab, and he would send rain to the land. While he was on his way to Ahab, Obadiah, the servant over Ahab's household, had been sent to find grass in order to save the king's horses and mules. Obadiah feared the Lord, and when Jezebel began to kill many of the prophets of the Lord, he hid 100 of them in a cave and fed them with bread and water. While Obadiah was looking for the grassland, Elijah met him and told him to go back to Ahab and let him know Elijah was there, which he reluctantly agreed to do when Elijah promised he would not leave. Secondly, Elijah challenges the prophets of Baal. When Ahab saw Elijah, he blamed him for the drought. But Elijah pointed out that the drought was on account of Ahab's abandoning of the Lord's commandments and following Baal's. So he told him to call the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets who ate at Jezebel's table. Ahab then assembled the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, which was one of the high places of worship for false gods, and Elijah challenged all the people, saying that it was time to choose between the Lord or Baal. And the way to determine who the one true God was is by preparing a sacrifice, calling upon each god, and the one who answers by fire would be the one worshipped in Israel. So, number 3, fire consumes Elijah's sacrifice. The people agreed to the terms, and the prophets of Baal went first, and they began calling upon Baal from morning until noon, and even began to cut themselves. But since nothing was happening, Elijah mocked them and said that their God must be busy, or he was in the bathroom, or maybe on a trip, or just asleep and needed to be awakened. When it was Elijah's turn, he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been torn down there by using 12 stones to represent the 12 tribes of Israel. He then dug a trench around the altar and had water poured in the trench and on the sacrifices 3 times. Finally, he called upon the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and the Lord sent fire that consumed the offering and dried up all the water around it. That caused the people to fall on their faces, and they declared that the Lord was the true God of Israel. And fourthly, Elijah kills the prophets of Baal. After the miraculous fire from heaven, Elijah had the prophets of Baal seized, brought them down to the brook Kishon, and slaughtered them there. After this, the Lord sent rain upon the land. Letter C. The Lord encourages Elijah. Number 1. Jezebel threatens to kill Elijah. After Elijah killed the prophets of Baal, Ahab told Jezebel, and she sent a messenger to tell Elijah that she was going to do the same to him tomorrow. So Elijah ran for his life to Beersheba, Judah, out of fear. Secondly, an angel feeds Elijah. After a day's journey, Elijah sat down under a juniper or a broom tree, which was most likely just a big bush, and asked God that he might just die. Then he went to sleep. While he slept, an angel came to him, touched him, fed him with a cake and water, and told him to go back to sleep. The angel did this again a second time, and then he got up, ate, and drank, and it gave him strength for 40 days and 40 nights until he got to Horeb, the mount of God. Thirdly, the Lord speaks to Elijah. When he got to a cave, the word of the Lord came to him and asked what he was doing there. To which Elijah replied that he was hiding because people sought his life, and he was the last prophet alive. The Lord then told Elijah to go out and stand on the mount, and the Lord sent a strong wind that caused an avalanche. But the Lord was not in the wind. Then he made an earthquake, but he was not in the earthquake. Then he sent a fire, but he was not in the fire. And finally, he made the sound of a low whisper. Fourthly, the Lord tells Elijah to anoint Hazael to be king of Syria, Jehu to be king of Israel, and Elisha to be the next prophet. After the previous events, Elijah went back to the entrance of the cave, and the Lord asked him again what he was doing there. Elijah replied the same way as he'd done before. But this time, the Lord told him to go to Damascus to anoint Hazael to be the king of Syria, Jehu to be the king of Israel, and Elisha to be the prophet in his place. And they would all three work together to kill those who worshiped idols. Fifthly, the Lord informs Elijah that there are 7,000 faithful people in Israel. The Lord ended all of this by telling Elijah that he had 7,000 in Israel, all who had not bowed to Baal. And number 6, Elisha follows after Elijah. Elijah then departed and found Elisha plowing with 12 yoke of oxen and cast his cloak on him. This caused Elisha to leave his oxen, run after Elijah, go back to tell his parents goodbye, and then went after Elijah and assisted him. Letter D. Syria attacks Israel. Number 1. Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, besieges Samaria. Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, gathered his army with 32 other kings, They came to Samaria, fought against it, and demanded Ahab's silver, gold, wives, and children, to which he cowardly agreed. Secondly, the elders tell Ahab not to give in to Ben-Hadad's commands. Ahab called for his elders, and they told him not to consent to Ben-Hadad's request. So he sent a messenger to let Ben-Hadad know this, and then Ben-Hadad responded by telling his men to take their positions against Samaria. Thirdly, a prophet foretells of Israel's victory over Syria. A prophet came to Ahab and told him that the Lord said he would deliver the enemy into his hands that day. So Ahab mustered up 7,000 men of Israel, and they went out at noon while Ben-Hadad was drunk with the 32 kings with him, and Israel began killing the Syrians, causing them to flee. Fourthly, Israel defeats the Syrians. The prophet came back to Ahab and warned him that the king of Syria would come up against him again, since the Syrians thought that the Lord was just the quote, God of the hills. They came back that spring to fight them in the open fields, so Israel gathered a small army against a massive army of Syria. Then a man of God approached the battle and declared that since Syria thought the Lord was just a God of the hills, then they would be defeated. And 7 days later, Israel struck down Syria, killed 100,000 men, and 27,000 men died when a wall fell on them in a city that they fled to. Number 5, Ahab makes a covenant with Ben-Hadad. Believing the kings of Israel to be merciful, Ben-Hadad's servants convinced him to come out of hiding and beg for mercy. When he did, he promised to give back the cities his father had taken from Israel and allow shops to be in Damascus as Syrian shops were in Samaria. Ahab agreed to these terms. However, number 6, a prophet condemns Ahab's treaty. After the battle, one of the prophets came to Ahab and claimed to have lost one of the men of war, to which the penalty was his own life. The king then said that the man had prescribed his own penalty, but then he realized the man was a prophet, and the prophet told him that since he had not fulfilled his duty to destroy the man that the Lord had devoted to destruction and his army, then he would lose his life for Ben-Hadad's and his people for their people. Letter E. Jezebel murders for Ahab. Number 1. Naboth refuses to sell Ahab his vineyard. A man named Naboth had a vineyard very close to Ahab's palace, and Ahab asked to purchase it or trade for better land so that he could have it for a vegetable garden. But Naboth did not want the land to leave his family, so he said no, and Ahab went back to his palace, pouted, got in his bed, and would not eat. So, number 2, Jezebel has Naboth stoned. When Jezebel found out what happened, she told Ahab to get up and eat and be happy because she would get the vineyard from Naboth. Jezebel then forged letters to the elders from the king and told them to proclaim a fast and then accuse Naboth of cursing God and the king so that he would be stoned to death, to which they did that very thing. After Jezebel received the news, she told Ahab that Naboth was dead and that the vineyard was now his. So he got up and went to the vineyard to take possession of it. Thirdly, Elijah condemns Ahab. The Lord sent Elijah to confront Ahab over what had happened to Naboth and to inform him that the very place that the dogs licked up Naboth's blood, they would also lick up Ahab's own blood. Elijah then told Ahab that the same fate that came upon Jeroboam and Baasha would come upon his family because of his idolatry, even to the point that anyone belonging to Ahab who dies in the city, the dogs would eat, and anyone who dies in the field, the birds would eat. Also, Jezebel would be eaten by dogs within the walls of Jezreel, the city of Naboth. However, number 4, the Lord honors Ahab's humility. Despite how wicked Ahab was for his idolatry, when he heard the words of Elijah, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and began to mourn. So the Lord sent Elijah to inform Ahab that since he humbled himself before the Lord, he would not bring disaster in his days, but instead in the days of his sons and upon his house. Letter F. Ahab, king of Israel, and Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, attack Syria. Number 1. Ahab asked Jehoshaphat to help him take back a city. For 3 years there was peace between Israel and Syria. But one day when Jehoshaphat came to Ahab for a feast, Ahab mentioned to him that Syria had a city called Ramoth Gilead that belonged to Israel, so they should attack them together. Secondly, Ahab confers with 400 prophets. Jehoshaphat first wanted Ahab to confer with the Lord to see if they should do this. So Ahab summoned 400 prophets, and they told him that they should attack Syria. But Jehoshaphat asked if there was another prophet they should confer with. Thirdly, Micaiah tells Ahab the truth. Ahab mentioned that there was another prophet named Micaiah, but Ahab hated him because he never prophesied good concerning him. However, Jehoshaphat insisted, so they brought Micaiah and asked him if they should attack Syria to take back the city. Micaiah informed Ahab that the Lord sent a lying spirit to tell the 400 prophets that he should attack Syria to bring disaster upon him. Fourthly, Ahab imprisons Micaiah. In response to this, one of Ahab's servants struck Micaiah on the cheek, and Ahab had him arrested and put in prison with small rations of bread and water until Ahab returned, to which Micaiah said he never would. That's why, number 5, Ahab dies in battle. When they went into battle against Syria, Ahab told Jehoshaphat that he was going to disguise himself in battle, but Jehoshaphat should still wear his robes. During the battle, and despite the disguise, one of the bowmen hit Ahab, and he eventually died from the wound in his chariot. And when they washed the blood out of the chariot, the dogs came and licked up his blood, thus fulfilling the word of the Lord that had been spoken by Elijah. Number 6, Ahaziah becomes king of Israel. Ahaziah began his reign during the 17th year of Jehoshaphat in Judah and reigned for only 2 years. But, just as his father and mother did, he did evil in the sight of the Lord and walked in the way of Jeroboam. Number 7, Jehu rebukes Jehoshaphat. After the battle against Syria, Jehoshaphat returned to Jerusalem and was condemned by Jehu the prophet because he said he helped the wicked and those who hate the Lord, since he aided Ahab in the battle against Syria. Therefore, Jehu declared that the Lord's wrath was against him. In spite of all of this, Jehoshaphat still appointed judges and Levites and priests and heads of families in Israel to judge the people with the charge that they should only do so fairly and courageously, since the Lord was with the upright. Letter G. Moab and Ammon threaten Jehoshaphat. Number 1. Jehoshaphat proclaims a fast in Judah. Some men informed Jehoshaphat that Moab and Ammon and some other nations were coming against him. So he became fearful, sought after the Lord, and proclaimed a fast in Judah. Secondly, Jahaziel encourages Judah. Jehoshaphat prayed to the Lord and reminded him about how God promised to help his people if they called out to him. So the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jahaziel, a son of Asaph, a Levite, and he told them that the Lord did not want them to be afraid, since the battle was the Lord's and not theirs. He then told them that they would go into battle tomorrow against the enemy, but the Lord would deliver them and that they would not even have to fight. In response to this, Jehoshaphat and all Judah fell down before the Lord, then worshiped and praised him with the Levites, the Kohathites, and the Korites. Thirdly, the Lord ambushes the enemy. The next morning, Jehoshaphat assigned the singers to go with the soldiers, and while they traveled together and sang, the Lord set an ambush against the enemy by making them all turn against each other. When the men finally got to the enemy's camp, they saw dead bodies lying on the ground. So they took their spoil for 3 days, since there was so much. Then they returned to Jerusalem with harps, lyres, and trumpets to the temple, and the fear of the Lord came upon all the nations. And number 4, Eleazar rebukes Jehoshaphat. After this, Jehoshaphat joined with wicked Ahaziah, king of Israel, by building ships together. So Eleazar the prophet spoke against him and said that the Lord would destroy what they made. And the ships then became wrecked and unable to sail. Letter H. Ahaziah's reign in Israel ends. Number 1. Ahaziah suffers an accident. After the death of Ahab and the beginning of the reign of his son Ahaziah, Moab rebelled against Israel, and then 2 years later, Ahaziah had a freak accident and fell through a lattice in his upper chamber in Samaria, becoming very sick. So he sent messengers to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, to find out if he would recover. Secondly, Elijah foretells of Ahaziah's death. The angel of the Lord told Elijah to go meet Ahaziah's messengers and tell them that since the king would not inquire of the Lord, and instead Baalzebub, which name literally means God of the flies, which was a derogatory term used by the Hebrews, then he will die of his injury. After meeting with Elijah, the messengers returned to Ahaziah and told them that they met a man who said he would die since he did not inquire of the Lord. And, after describing that man, Ahaziah knew it was Elijah. Thirdly, Elijah calls down fire to consume Ahaziah's men. Ahaziah sent one of his captains with 50 men to demand Elijah come with them to see the king. So Elijah called down fire to consume them. This happened again with a second captain with his 50 men. But the captain of the third group of 50 men fell on his knees in front of Elijah and begged for the life of his men. So the angel of the Lord told Elijah to go with them and not be afraid to tell Ahaziah he would die. And number 4, Jehoram becomes king of Israel. Ahaziah died just like the word of the Lord said through Elijah, and Jehoram, the son of Ahab and brother of Ahaziah, reigned in his stead as king of Israel. That was because Ahaziah did not have any sons. He began his reign during the second year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah. Roman numeral 4, Elisha ministers in Israel. Letter A, Elijah is taken to heaven. Number 1, Elijah and Elisha traveled to Bethel and Jericho. When the Lord was about to take Elijah to heaven, he told Elisha to stay in Gilgal while he traveled to Bethel. But Elisha said that as long as he lived, he would not leave him. So they went to Bethel. Then, when they got to Bethel, Elijah told Elisha to stay there while he traveled to Jericho. But again, Elisha said that as long as he lived, he would not leave him. So they went to Jericho. Interestingly, the sons of the prophets, which were disciples of Elijah that the Lord had preserved for him, were in Jericho, and they asked Elisha if he knew that the Lord was going to take Elijah from him. Elisha replied he did, but they should keep quiet. Secondly, Elijah parts the Jordan River. When Elijah was going to leave Jericho for Jordan, he told Elisha to stay there. But again, Elisha said that as long as he lived, he would not leave him. So they went to the Jordan, and Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, struck the water, and it parted so that they could both go over on dry ground. Thirdly, Elisha asks for a double portion of Elijah's spirit. When they crossed the Jordan, Elijah asked Elisha what he could do for him. Elisha replied that he wanted a double portion of his spirit upon him. Elijah said that this was a difficult thing to ask, but if he saw him leave, then it would be so. But if not, then it would not be so. And when they went a little further, chariots and horses of fire separated the two of them, and Elisha saw a whirlwind take Elijah up to heaven. Fourthly, Elisha parts the Jordan River. When Elisha was traveling back, he got to the Jordan River, took Elijah's cloak that had fallen off of him, struck the water, and it parted, allowing him to cross over on dry ground, just like Elijah had done before. Number 5, the sons of the prophets search for Elijah. When Elisha returned to Jericho, the sons of the prophets asked if they could go looking for Elijah, since maybe he was just taken to some mountain or some valley. Elisha resisted letting them go at first, but on account of their persistence, he let them leave, and they returned 3 days later, not having found Elijah. And Elisha basically just told them, I told you so. Number 6, Elisha heals the waters of Jericho. The men of the city came to Elisha and told him that the city water was bad and affecting the crops. So Elisha told them to bring him a new bowl with salt in it, and then he took it to the spring, threw the salt in, prayed, and then the Lord healed the waters so that no more death or miscarriage came from it. And number 7, some boys mock Elisha. On his way back to Bethel, some small boys came out of the city and began making fun of him, saying, "Go up, you bald head." So Elisha cursed them, and then two she bears came out of the woods and killed 42 of them. Then he left and went to Mount Carmel and then to Samaria. Letter B. Jehoram reigns in Israel. Number 1. Jehoram reigned for 12 years. Jehoram was the son of Ahab, brother of Ahaziah, and he began his reign during the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and he reigned for 12 years. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, though not as bad as Ahab and Jezebel, his parents, but he still sinned after the sin of Jeroboam. Secondly, Jehoram goes to war against Moab. Mesha, the king of Moab, used to deliver 100,000 lambs and 100,000 rams to Ahab, but when Ahab died, Mesha rebelled against Israel, so Jehoram mustered all of Israel and sent word to Jehoshaphat to aid in his fight, and Jehoshaphat agreed. Thirdly, the kings of Israel, Judah, and Edom confer with Elisha. After the kings of Israel and Judah teamed up with Edom, they got to a spot after 7 days of travel where there was no water. So Jehoram blamed the Lord for trying to kill them. But Jehoshaphat asked for a prophet that could inquire of the Lord. One of Jehoram's servants mentioned Elisha, the servant of Elijah. So Jehoshaphat and the kings went down to him. When they got to Elisha, he told Jehoram to talk to his father and his mother's prophets, and said that if Jehoshaphat had not been there, he would not even look at Jehoram, much less speak to him. Elisha then told them that the Lord was going to fill their stream bed without wind or rain, and he will give the Moabites into their hands. And the next morning, water came from the direction of Edom and filled that area with water. And fourthly, Mesha, king of Moab, sacrifices his oldest son. When the Moabites came to fight against them, they saw the water red like blood, so they thought the three kings had turned on each other. But when they got to their camps, they attacked Mesha and won so handedly that he offered his oldest son as a burnt offering on the wall. However, this caused the other nations to be angered at Israel and return to their own lands. That brings us to the end of Lecture 10 for Old Testament historical books.